once you light a log cabin on fire, it goes up pretty quick. You don't have a lot of time. And so with the cabin, it was kind of a nice thing. We filmed all of our scenes in the cabin. And then about halfway through the production, then we lit it on fire and burnt it down. And it was kind of a lovely moment for the crew. Everybody came out, even the people who didn't need to be there that day. There was something kind of galvanizing and sad, but that felt like it kind of represented the story and helped everybody get deeper into it.
Hi, I'm Anthony D'Alessandro of Deadline Hollywood, and this is Crew Call Live with Netflix's Train Dreams. We are here today with the recent Critics' Choice and LAFCA-winning cinematographer, Adolpho Veloso. Hello.
Hello.
The movie's Golden Globe-nominated composer and songwriter, Bryce Dessner. Hi.
Hi.
And the co-screenwriter and director of the film, Mr. Clint Bentley. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us.
So, Clint, tell us about coming to Denis Johnson's novella.
I think the book is so special, and it's such a beautiful book. And, you know, it's a slim book. It's only 116 or 117 pages, and it's told in this very stream of consciousness style. And Denis Johnson has this way of writing in that book, particularly where he just bounces over years and goes back and forth across time. And yet in that small container, you feel an entire life. And it felt like, for a lot of what I'd been through and was going through at the time, it felt like something not only cinematically that felt like it had a lot of potential in terms of being in this natural world in the Pacific Northwest, in this world of logging, watching time go by, being able to deal with dreams and memories within the context of a story. But then also just like what it was speaking about felt like a good container for things that I wanted to explore with the film. Grief and time passing and love and all of these, you know, some bigger things that you can't always find something that fits, find a story that can fit all those things. And then the more once getting into like adapting the book with Greg Cuidar, my co-writer, the story seemed to open up more and more, and yet always stayed grounded in this character of Robert Grenier and what he was going through. And I think just at the end of the day, coming back to this story of just a small life and what might be seen from the outside as maybe even an insignificant life from the outside. He leaves really nothing behind in the world when he passes on. But trying to show all of the depth and the beauty of his experience while he was here, just all felt very exciting.
Is nature as much character in the novella as it is in the film?
It is and it isn't. I think it is, in that, you know, you're dealing in a time where people were much more living more in contact with nature and not so separated from it. You know, one thing that I think got us all in the headspace, on set, we had this log cabin that was built by our production designer, Alex Schaller, and her team. There's a real log cabin that you could have moved into, and a lot of us did want to move into it before we burned it down. But you know, when it was cold outside, we had to shut the doors and light a little fire inside. When it was hot outside, we opened all the windows and kind of let the breeze flow through. And you just felt more in touch with nature in a way and with the natural world than when I would go back to my Airbnb at night. And if I was cold, I would press a button on the wall and I would be less cold, you know? And so, yes, in the way that people at that time were living more in concert with nature, but just starting to see the effects of humans' actions on nature, and that was thereby, you know, through forest fires and things like this and deforestation coming back to affect humans, that I wanted to explore, I think, in a deeper way than it's explored in the novel or the novella.
It's not easy to make movies nowadays. It's not easy to make studio films. It's not easy to make indie films.
Yeah.
Tell us about the journey of this project. Getting Joel attached, and then coming to Teddy Schwartzman.
Yeah, and the journey even preceded me for a long time. Three of our producers on the project, Marissa McMahon, Ashley Schlafer, and Will Janowitz, they had the rights to the book and had been trying to find a filmmaker for it for a long time. And I was lucky that they hadn't before they saw my previous film Jockey, and then approached me about it. And then, you know, like Greg and I wrote the script, and then, you know, the first person you look for, the first cast member you look for is your Granier, your Robert Granier, and Joel just felt like the perfect person. And luckily he got excited about it. He had his own history with the novella where he had inquired about its rights years before. Wow. Unbeknownst to any of us, he really loved it. And yeah, he attached himself before we had any financing or anything, and really took a leap of faith on the project, and on me as a filmmaker in a way that just meant so much and helped us get some momentum. And Teddy Schwartzman and his outfit over at Black Bear, Greg and I had made our previous film, which Greg directed, called Sing Sing, which Bryce scored. We had made that with Teddy. And when we got to the end of that, he was like, what else are you working on? And we showed him Train Dreams, and he fell in love with it. And he was the only person in town that really took a leap of faith on it, and really believed in it enough to, you know, finance it independently and get it made. It's a real testament to him.
Did you ever imagine a year ago when you were world premiering this at Sundance, you would be here in the aorta from Horn season?
No. When, I don't know about you, but Adolpho and I are similar in this. At the premiere, I was only imagining the worst things and being super nervous about what would happen. But no, I mean, we made this, you know, it's an independent film. We didn't have a lot of money. We made it in 29 days. And it's a very, you know, the pacing is very deliberate and things like that. And I didn't know who would watch it, and certainly didn't expect that it would catch on in the way that it has, but I'm very, very grateful for it.
Now, Adolpho, you worked on Jockey together. I'm curious, how did you...
And Bryce as well.
And Bryce. How did you come to learn of Adolpho's work, and has that impacted your film style?
Yeah, 1,000%. I was looking for a DP for Jockey, and had been through a lot of, like, talking to a lot of people that I knew, and they weren't available for one reason or another. And then I was like, yeah, I know, thank God for both of those. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to open it up and look out in the wider world. And I remember I had seen his work on a documentary series that he had done called On Yoga. And it was something where he had I'd looked at the behind the scenes because I'd really admired the work as it was presented. And then I saw in the behind the scenes, like, he was going out into, like, these caves in the mountains in Nepal, or I don't know, India. And it was just him and a camera and a fire. And yet these scenes looked like Caravaggio paintings. It was amazing. And when I saw what he could do with so little, we had a meeting over, there wasn't even Zoom at the time, there was just Skype. We had a meeting over Skype, and we just had 2 conversations about the film, about Jockey. And then Adolpho was like, I don't know, let's see how it goes. You take a risk, I'll take a risk, we'll see what happens. And I'm so grateful that we did. And so, yeah, so much of my style in terms of, as a director, in terms of the things I can do and the freedom that I have and the way that I can interact with the actors comes from my faith in him and his ability to be very free and be very loose when we need to adapt to the elements and still make incredible imagery, while the actors somehow also have complete freedom in a way that I don't know how it all works together.
So 99% of this, I understand, shot in natural light.
Correct.
How meticulous did you have to plan it? How much did you have to improvise when it came to getting these killer sunsets? I mean, the fire underneath the train going by on the track, the deep greens in the forest, a tree falling. I know, like with Malik, sometimes he'll rip up his shot list, and he'll say, "Okay, grab the camera. We're going to go chase butterflies." But on an independent film, 29 days, do you have that liberty?
Well, it is a lot of planning. I feel like it's a bit of both. Because of the tight schedule, we had to be really assertive on what we wanted and what was important, especially when like planning the days and trying to figure out how to schedule things in a way that, because of the fact that we were working with natural light, we were not exposed outside throughout the whole day and not shooting in light that we didn't want to. So I feel like shooting on location was key to that, because then we could be inside that cabin that Alex built, for example, when light didn't feel right outside, and then we would go outside when light felt better outside, and vice versa. Or if it started to rain, we could go inside, or we could just embrace rain. Well, to talk back to on that and give him the words about it, I feel like there's something so amazing about Clint that he's always so open to see what's happening and not just be stuck with what he imagined before and what we imagined before. So if there's something better happening outside, the scene was supposed to be inside, but then suddenly feels bad outside and the actors want to be outside and not inside or whatever, he's always going to go for it, and he's going to encourage people to always also go for those things. So I feel like it was a lot of planning, but also a lot of improvising on just those things that would happen, that would come to us, and we wouldn't just like let go. So yeah, it was a bit of everything.
The tricks with the trees. Okay, there are certain instances where it feels like the camera is mounted right on the tree. And then there are other instances where we're watching the tree fall. But that's a lot of tree falling. Like, I'm just like, is it one shot and done? Or are you cutting 3 or 4 trees in the course of the afternoon?
No, we wanted to be very thoughtful about how we approached how we were filming things like that, so that we weren't doing the same things that the film is questioning and criticizing. And so with all of that, we went into areas where they were already logging. We did 2 approaches. One is we went into areas where they were already logging and taking down trees, and we just asked them, which trees are you going to take down, and can we film it when you're cutting it down? So that, we weren't destroying nature in the process as much as we could avoid it. And then the other thing, going back to our production designer, Alex, is she built some of these big, out of like styrofoam and plywood, built some of these big 12-foot tall stumps that then Ilya Mokhtarizadeh, our VFX supervisor, and his team could extend the top of them in VFX. And she put real bark on them and moss and all of this stuff on these stumps that then our actors could cut into with saws as if we're cutting into old growth trees without ever touching an old growth tree. And so we were just trying to be conscious of how to do that sort of thing with movie magic versus destroying nature. And it goes back to something Adolpho on Jockey, part of the mantra that he set out for us that we followed and then I think took into this was, let's really focus on, instead of doing 5 mediocre shots in a scene, let's do 2 really good ones. And that's the only way you can get away with, doing as much as we were able to do on such a limited budget and limited time.
The fire. Tell us about pulling off these fire seeds. And of course, it's a controlled environment, but it's a lot of fire in the film.
It is a lot of fire, and we really wanted to use just real fire. I feel like there's nothing that beats real fire, the way it flickers on the faces and the temperature, and also even for the actors, I feel like there's a different feeling to be around a table full of candles or an LED light. I feel like it's different for me, so I imagine for them might be the same. So we wanted to stick with that for the end result and also for the process. And as Clint said, like, it was nice to be around the campfire. It was cold, So there's a sense of reality on that also, that it's quite charming for the process. And that I mean, it's kudos to everybody on the crew too. We had an amazing art department team that brought us all the possible fixtures and candles and lanterns and gas lamps and stuff like that. And also the SFX teams with the campfires. So they were actual real. And then I think the main challenge was the big fire itself, when the forest actually burning, that we didn't burn a forest, obviously. So that was the only scene in the movie that suddenly we had to use lights. And that was something that was stressful, because for like an hour and something, the movie, you've been watching all those characters around real fires, and then suddenly you have one scene that is not. So we didn't want that scene to pop from the movie and feel fake or anything like that. So we went and tested a lot. Kevin Cook, the gaffer, did an amazing job with the light rig. It was basically a wall of light that was then changed by the VFX team for a wall of fire, and it was just a lot of testing. And I feel like we got to something that it's really good in terms of matching all the real fire in the movie.
You had mentioned that the cabin was burnt down.
Yeah,
So how did you manage that? Was it burnt gradually?
Oh no. Once you light a log cabin on fire, it goes up pretty quick. You don't have a lot of time. So we, with all of this stuff, we were, as Adolpho was saying, practical is always best, as much as you can do that, and as long as you can do it safely and thoughtfully. And so with the cabin, it was kind of a nice thing. We filmed all of our scenes in the cabin with Joel and Felicity early on in their life, and then some like modified version of the cabin that then represents his rebuilt cabin with Joel. And then about halfway through the production, then we lit it on fire and burnt it down, and it was kind of a lovely moment for the crew. Everybody came out, even the people who didn't need to be there that day. Bill Macy was in town visiting before his scenes and came out to like witness it. And it I don't know, there was something kind of galvanizing and sad, but that felt like it kind of represented the story and helped everybody get deeper into it. And then the big fire, the forest fire, we shot that in an area that had been decimated by a forest fire. And so you've got that background, as Adolpho was saying, that you're working with this palette, and then our special effects crew is pumping in ash and pumping in smoke and lighting real fires around, that then we're building off the VFX from those real fires. And then the final part of that is like it all comes together with after the VFX and Joel's performance and everything, it's all glued together by this piece of music that Bryce put together, that outside of some of the other pieces in the film some are sweet and some are thoughtful and some are mournful, this one kind of almost takes on this like avant-garde, like John Cage aspect to it that really like, I think turns it into something otherworldly that it wouldn't be without it.
Your score, it just accentuates and just exudes nature. Tell us about how you approached this.
It was a dream project for me, for any composer, really. Such a beautiful script and incredible cinematography, and it's a film with a lot of room for music because of the nature, because it's fairly minimal in the dialogue. This is the fourth film that Clint and I have worked on together in various ways, including Jockey, that we all worked on together. So we have a lot of history with each other and a lot of trust and a lot of sense of kind of exploration and trying things. And so in this one, I was involved really early, prior in those, I think I remember when Joel came on, I got a call or a message, it was like early on. And so read the script, and then these guys brought me a copy of the novella when I was passing through Texas, in Austin, Texas, like in the years prior to the shoot. And so some different things about this project for me, where I did compose quite a lot of music up front while Clint was on set. I wanted to kind of feel like the music had time, given that the nature of the project, also that it's based on this novella, which is really about, just the beauty of this prose and these words. And, Denis Johnson is one of the great American writers. And I wanted, film music, often you get called in late and you work and out of necessity. It's one of the things that comes last. And it's, it can play a big role in the final months of a process, of a years long process. In this case, I wanted the music to have time to kind of develop, and, where maybe if we only heard a 30-second moment, it was part of a longer process of composition, really. So there is, I did some early sessions basically prior to really while they were shooting. And one of them, the principal one I did, I was going through Portland, Oregon, and worked with members of the Oregon Symphony in an old, I wanted also to kind of, a lot of film studios are very high tech. Again, out of necessity, they're built for these intense processes that, happen, and you have 2 days to record a full orchestra and you need everything at the absolute, there's no room, no margin for error. I kind of wanted to do the opposite. I wanted to work with old analog gear, old ribbon microphones. I wanted like some dust on the tape. So that's what you're hearing when you say intimate. There's a string quartet playing from the Oregon Symphony on a lot of the main theme, which is called Passageways, which is the kind of like sort of song-like theme that we hear several times. I did some recording in Chicago in another old recording studio where they had beautiful old parlor pianos, and again, a lot of RCA ribbon microphones, which would have existed in the 30s and 40s. So that was kind of, for me, it was just a chance to, again, with the trust, and Clinton could have told me, actually, like, none of this is working, and that would have been fine, really, but it was kind of, I wanted to do that. There were pieces of music that came to me. There's the piece that you see when Arn, William Macy's character is, trying to blow up the tree, and like that, that kind of dun 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 dun. That was like the train music that I heard in my head the minute we started talking about this. And I knew I was going to do that piece, so it's like better get it out of the way. And then there was a whole other, more, once we were into picture and like Adolpho had done his work and the beautiful, this thing was coming together, and then picture asks for things. And it's like, and that's when there was this beautiful process of really like bringing these ideas I had been developing and then bringing them into picture. And, for instance, the beginning and the end are two really important pieces of music. That are more gestural, and the piano playing, especially the last piece, The Great Mystery, is very lyrical and had to do really heavy lifting there. So that was something we worked on a lot and was recorded then with full orchestra. And so it was, there's also a lot of me playing on the score. A lot of the piano playing is me. The guitars that you hear are me. So that was also a fun part of this.
Now, that final sequence in the plane, talk about shooting them. In the challenge.
Wow, that was tricky because we wanted to keep it as naturalistic as possible. It would be then suddenly the only scene in the movie with a green screen, or like, well, how do we not do that? So there was a lot of conversations on how do we get that done in the most believable way. And we couldn't, for insurance reasons, we couldn't put Joe on a plane. On a biplane, so we were just like trying to figure out how to do it, and we figured that we could easily get the images of the plane flying, because then we just flew a plane, rigged some cameras, but then how do we film the actors? And one day, for random reason, I saw a video of a BDS of Dunkirk and the way they shot some of those plane sequences. And then I sent one of those videos to Clint. I was like, what if we do that? And we were just, okay, I think they had more money than us, so not sure we can do it. But what they basically just like had all those rigs to shoot the cockpit scenes. And we were just like, okay, how do we do that? How do we do the real version of that for us in our reality? And then our department, again, Alex and her team and the SFX team built an amazing rig that is basically the cockpit of the plane on a gimbal that would like just turn all possible axes. And that gave us not only the real background, because then that was elevated and we had real sky behind them, but also light was interacting with them for real. So because of the fact that we could turn that up and down and on all possible directions, the light on them is actually just the sun, and it's spinning because they are spinning. And I think for them also, whenever the plane was supposed to be going down, they would turn the gimbal down, and the actors would know what to react to. And we just rigged the cameras on the plane as we would, with the same limitations that a camera on a real plane would have. So it felt real, like they were on a real plane, and it was just funny to shoot it actually, because then it was like Clint screaming on to them on like what directions he wanted the plane to be going, and I was screaming on the other way like, oh, because the sun is behind, okay, no, let's turn the other way. So it was just a bunch of screaming to try to get that scene, and it was fun. Yeah.
As a movie that's set in early 20th century Americana, visually, what were your touchstones? And also musically, what were your inspirations? I see the film and I see, not to steer you, Ansel Adams. Like, that's my immediate go-to. But there were a lot of photographers in that era.
We did look to photography quite a bit. Part of it was in the subject of it. There's this photographer Darius Kinsey that we had looked to, and we even recreated a couple of his photographs in the film. He took a lot of photographs. He like documented this logging industry back in that time. As also a documentation, he would send it. He and his wife would create these photographs, and then they'd send it back to the loggers as a bit of like, kind of like what we were doing with the film, of like a record that they were there. But then on a more like thematic level or something, Adolpho pulled a lot of photographs from Dorothy Lange, and some of the lesser known, there were photographs I had never seen that she had done. I think you can talk a bit about like what's
especially the pictures she took during the Great Depression, and which is kind of basically also the same time that the movie is, but it was mostly because thematically she was able to pull something that is like incredible for me, which is first of all capture beauty within desperation and chaos, and also how the environment around those characters is part of what they are living. So it's not just those faces, but the place they are. And I feel like that's so important on Train Dreams. It's not just those characters and those people, but also the nature around them or where they live. And we wanted to have that a lot. And then we came to our aspect ratio and talking about all the pictures we saw from the time. We were like, okay, this is the aspect ratio. You know, like we want to have that feeling of watching memories, and that's probably what evokes memory to us. And yeah, and then I feel like that aspect ratio allowed us to also have a lot of headroom and show a lot of the environment that those characters are, and how much we as humans affect nature and our environment, and how the environment affects us back. And I feel like that was so really important for the story. Yeah.
And then Bryce, for you, were there any jumping off points?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think that in addition to the kind of small ensemble or the music that is kind of like American string music, which is like a period of, early 20th century folk music that I love. So I wanted that, sound of the strings and kind of small sound. And then there's obviously, the nature of this film, being so set in landscape, and there's this a period of I write a lot of music for the concert hall, so away from cinema, and a lot of it is inspired by landscape or by the ocean or by and so I think there's a kind of tradition of orchestral writing, like people like Olivier Messiaen, who's like an early 20th century French composer who Quartet for the End of Time would be like the most famous piece, but there's many pieces written in nature that's a kind of, and there's harmonic moments in the score. The one thing that I learned, for instance, in that second phase of writing, and that Clint was very encouraging about, is that the nature of the picture could really drink up harmony, and so there are moments of harmonic tension which push quite far for in a film score, in terms of like what often dissonance is like. Usually in movie music there's like it's like allergic to dissonance, where this one was the opposite. It's like I think we can go further. And so and it actually sounds beautiful. It's like beautiful dissonance. There's also, there's this timeless feeling about the whole film where, sometimes it's like, is it like Greek tragedy or something? You have this feeling of these things that are so relatable, like loss and memory and this painting of a life. And So I kind of, while the music is understated, it's not like overstating itself, but there is a grandness about it that felt, again, like that period of, in orchestral music, there's these kind of dichotomy. And if you look at like the history of, say, Mahler or Strauss, or these kind of like late 19th century, early 20th century composers, where you have kind of like the hero's journey, and on the other side of that, duality, you have the pastoral symphony. And those two things, I feel like they're like, age-old archetypes, but they really worked in this film in terms of it. So there's a bit of reference in that, I would say, especially towards Messiaen, who's this composer that I'm quite influenced by.
Speaking about Grand, you didn't talk about Nick Cave yet. I mean, his baritone is just right for that for your Golden Globe nominated song. Train Dreams.
Thank you, Nick, for that nomination.
Can you talk about how the song came about and what was needed?
Yeah, I think that we did the work, the primary work of the score, and towards the end of the process, Clint, was kind of dreaming about, like, is there a song? There's obviously the William Macy song in the film, which is gorgeous. And we were just riffing on who could that be, and it was a tall question because there's very few voices that could be. And Clint's dream, who's Nick is a huge hero of mine and of my band. Obviously, we're like tremendously influenced by him. And Clint was like, "Well, Nick Cave," and I was like, "Well, how do you even get to him? I don't know. I know his drummer, but and so we just kind of went for it, and with the help of the production and Netflix and basically Nick is a fan of Denis Johnson, had a previous knew Joel a bit. I think Joel sent a word, and Nick just fell in love with what he saw and the story, and obviously his life and who he is, and the loss that he's been through, just and the fact that he knew the story already. I think it would have felt really prompting a bit like this. Obviously, like someone who's lost family in the intense way that he has. But it really spoke to him. And then even more than that, he heard what I'd done with the score and was just really respectful. He called me while I was in Paris with my 7-year-old son, like at a cafe, and I got I had no idea, that the whole process was kind of miraculous.
Yeah.
Because there was like a lot of it, I was kind of like, I was literally like a cold call. And then Clint, I also kind of we did the whole song before anybody else heard it. And then I sent it and I was like, "Oh, hey, how's this?" And Clint's like mind blown, But essentially he's like, "Look, I don't want to, I score films myself. I don't want to just insert myself into this film. Can you send me some music that I could, can you work on something so that I could, that would fit with the score, and then I'll write over that." And so that's what happened, is basically I, developed something and sent it to him, and then he had already written the lyrics, and then it was just, often great songs are effortless, and this one just sort of like, and he sent it to me, he was really nervous. He's like, and he called me, he's like, "What do you think? Is it good?" And I'm like, "Nick, it's like the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." He's like, "Oh, really? You think so? Do you want me to change anything?" I'm like, "Don't change anything." It was like the paint was still drying, and it was kind of this, and I think now that I think about it, I think that, the role that Carrie Condon's, character, or William Macy's, Armed People's, that character. I think Nick is he's a foil. Like, he comes in, he's saying, like bringing into the, also it's sort of, again, like the kind of minimal feeling of the whole story, that it's not, punching a plot too hard, but it's somehow like Nick says so much, like the song is full of words.
Yeah.
And the one thing he, that refrain of like, "I can't begin to tell you how this feels," which in a way like sums up the entire movie, and also sums up what great art can do, I think, and what music can do, is like, if we, we might not have words for this, but this is this experience. And and just he's such a masterful poet in that way.
Yeah. Clint, what's your next collaboration
With these guys?
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Yeah. I find that, I was saying this a bit earlier, but I find that, like, this is my second film, right? And I'm still very much figuring out what I can do with cinema, what my little corner can be. And a lot of that is I'm very lucky to collaborate with such amazing artists, but also such great people that I've become very close with. And the only tragedy is that it takes so long between films before you get the band back together. So, yeah.
Well, your corner of cinema is quite epic.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank our guest cinematographer of Train Dreams, Adolpho Veloso, composer Bryce Dessner, and the co-screenwriter and filmmaker, Mr. Clint Bentley. Thank you all so much. Train Dreams is a Critics' Choice winning film, and it's up for 2 Golden Globes and 4 Independent Spirit Awards. I'm Anthony D'Alessandro of Deadline Hollywood, and this is Deadline's Crew Call Live with Netflix's Train Dreams. Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Crew Call podcast on Deadline. Make sure you subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode.